The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live on this beautiful Wednesday morning. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It is Wednesday, and you know I love a Wednesday because we have such a chock-full show for you today. Now, I will tell you at the start here that normally we welcome Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh with you, and as you know, if Dr. Granpeesheh has other places to be, often we will show you a best of Dr. Doreen, but when we're very lucky, and today we are very lucky, we do a segment where we ask Evelyn Kung. Evelyn Kung is the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and it's always a thrill to have her on the show. We will have her live on the show in just a few minutes, and she will be answering your questions. Now is an ideal time for you to start writing into the show if you do have a question, and there are many different ways that you can do this. Samantha's going to show you some of those different ways, while I will remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you do go to our homepage, you will see that there is the computer screen. It looks like a desktop. If you click on the triangle that's on the computer screen, it will start the live show playing or the most recently recorded live show. To the side of all that is something we refer to as the live feature. If you will put your cursor in the box that says your question, all you have to do is type and hit enter. I will caution you that it takes a couple of minutes for it to bounce off a satellite and come back down to us from wherever you are in the world. So make sure that you ask your questions early in the segment and don't wait till the end of the segment. If you hit enter, it shows up here, as I said. You don't have to log in or remember a password or a username or prove that you're not a bot. You don't have to enter a credit card. It's all free and relatively instant gratification, right? And that way I can see what you're saying. I don't share your private information. Now, there are times when what you're writing is really lengthy, and so it might be useful to write in a different format or to email me directly, s.penrod@autism- which is the dash in the middle, live.com. But we encourage you to write in however you prefer, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, on that live feature. You can write in to us on Twitter. We are also on Periscope, all those places that Samantha showed you. But the live feature, the nice thing about the live feature is that it's completely anonymous. Even I don't get to know who you are. So it does help, I will tell you this, when you write in a live feature to give us an idea where in the world you're writing in from. We love to know that as a rule anyway, to get a feel for who's watching and where you're watching. But I will tell you that it's also important because autism is not a level playing field. What is available to me in California may not be available to someone who's in Kentucky, and certainly isn't available to those of you who might be in Zimbabwe, right? So if you let us know where you are in the world, we will help to connect you as best we can with resources that are available where you are, because that's what makes the most sense, right? We do love it when you write in. We love that interaction. So in just a few minutes, we're going to be back with Evelyn Kung, as I mentioned. A little bit later on in the second hour today, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will be joining me, and we will have two guests with us today. One of them is Jenny Palmietto, who's been on the show with us before. her. She's from the Love and Autism Conference, and we're going to really dig in and talk about this year's conference and how love flourishes and can flourish on the autism spectrum. I always love it when Jenny's here to talk about that. And then we also have Brenda Smith-Miles. She's the president of AAPC. We've been featuring a lot of books recently from this particular publisher, and we want to talk with her about what their mission is and what books are coming out this fall that may be of use to all of us. We've been particularly excited about what we've been seeing coming out of that particular publisher, so we're looking forward to that. That and in the news, much, much more. But first, before we show you our segment with we have Dr. Temple Grandin. I got all fatootzed about it, thinking about it. We're going to show you a clip from a video that we did just a couple of years ago with Dr. Grandin, but then we're going to be back with Evelyn Kung answering your questions. So take a look at this. I got to do the U-turn around the thing? Okay. So, Kelby, do I want the north entry or the south, or does it matter? Okay. Are we doing curbside bag check? Which way, Kelby? Left? Yeah. Kelby, can I go through the TV? Yeah, I have a toll tag.
Then you go through the T.
Okay. What do you do that, like, you could just spend 2 hours doing and have it suck all your time?
Oh, I like to look up interesting research articles on animal behavior. Found a really interesting European papers on how wolves are different than dogs that I read last week that were very, very interesting.
Very cool.
Because I've always talked about a brain can be more social emotional or a brain can be more cognitive.
Yeah.
And the wolf turns out to be more cognitive, and we've bred the dog to be more social emotional.
How fascinating is that?
Very, very interesting. The wolves were very good at watching another wolf solve a problem.
We were talking a little bit about television before, and I cannot believe that what you said to me, what you like to watch on television.
Star Trek. I was a Star Trek fan when I was a teenager. I liked the Star Trek Next Generation. I was watching that when I was working on my PhD in the 80s.
And so what...
Total Star Trek fan.
What's your favorite series, and what's your favorite character, and what's your favorite
Mr.
episode?
Spock was my favorite character.
Love it. And what's favorite episode? This guy is going to hate me.
There was a lot of good. My favorite Star Trek movie was the one with the whales.
Yes.
Yeah, I really liked that Star Trek movie.
And so sad that we lost Leonard Nimoy this year.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that you like to watch television. Do you like to go to the movies too?
Oh yes, I went and saw Gravity. There's certain movies that have to be seen in a theater, like Gravity and Avatar.
Yes.
I went to see Inside Out in the theater. I really liked that movie.
What did you think of that?
I liked it. I think about how the emotions interact.
I gotta be honest, I had said after that I thought that it was going to be a great tool for people to show kids on the autism spectrum about perspective taking.
Yeah.
About what it's like in other people's heads.
Well, no, it's more like how the emotions inside your own head sort of conflict with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love The Wizard of Oz, and I love the idea of the ruby slippers. She had the way back home. She just didn't know she had it.
Yeah.
You see, and I think that's a metaphor for a lot of things. A lot of people have the ruby slippers, but they don't know they have them. They don't know they got the key that can open up the door to a lot of really great stuff.
So what would you say was your ruby slipper?
Well, I had, when some opportunities came up, like when I designed those dip vats, that was a major breakthrough for my business. And when the head of the feed yard came up to me and asked me if I'd do it, I said, give me 3 weeks. You know, a lot of people would have been too scared to walk through the door. Now, this is pre-internet, and I knew it would take me 3 weeks to get some of the information I needed, especially on concrete reinforcement, to design the dip vats.
But you did it.
I did it. I was on the phone the next day to the USDA to get the drawings on the concrete reinforcement.
Wow. So I want to journey back to childhood for just a second and talk about friends, because a lot of times people ask about friends. Who was your best friend?
When I was in elementary school, one of my best friends was a girl named Eleanor. And she was the first girl in elementary school to get to take wood shop instead of cooking. And I was the second girl in our school to get to take wood shop. So we like to make stuff. It's all about making stuff. And I had good friends in high school, even though I got bullied and teased. I got friends who shared interests, riding horses together, doing electronics together, doing model rockets together, doing stuff together with other students.
So you found, like your mom says about, you found your tribe.
Yeah, and you've got to get them in doing things with other people.
And you did a lot of theater, and did you sing as a kid?
Yeah, I did. One of the problems I was singing is I couldn't synchronize my rhythm with somebody else's rhythm.
Do you still have a hard time doing that?
I still have a hard time doing that.
Because we were going to ask you if you wanted to sing something in the car with us.
Well, I think maybe we'll skip that.
Great question. But the one question people always ask us is they want to know if you've ever been in love.
No, never have.
And you don't feel like you're missing anything.
I've seen so much turmoil in so many marriages that I haven't really seen a situation that would be a good model.
And yet you gave me really good marriage advice.
Because I'm a good problem solver. You have to take the problem and cut it down. And in engineering, you have to find the root cause of a problem.
What do you think is your secret to your success as a teacher?
Well, presenting things really clearly.
Yeah.
That's really important. Making things interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's also important that it's something in a class that a student can take home and use. I teach a class in cattle behavior and handling, and I've got a lot of students that are pre-vet that are going to go in the dog and cat. Probably won't be handling any cattle. But I said, you want to design this corral system because it's visual problem solving. You have to figure out how to do it. It's not a cookbook. And then I have my internet project where they can pick out anything in animal behavior, and I make them dig into a narrow subject that I have to approve because I want them digging into Google Scholar and PubMed, Science Direct, and the other databases. They got to learn how to find stuff online, and I'm finding about 2/3 of the students are not very good at that. How about this? Make Magazine. This is the kind of thing that a lot of kids on the spectrum need to be doing. The cool stuff in here. Really
Make Magazine is going to love that you
Make
did that.
Magazine. It's a wonderful magazine.
And
I'm okay. Yes, and they're resurrecting old satellites from mission control and an abandoned McDonald's. That's the kind of stuff I really like. These are the kind of magazines we need to get in school. Make Magazine, Business Week, Science, Nature, Wired. We got to show kids out there. There's all kinds of super interesting stuff out there. But if they don't see it, then they don't know about it. I like to geek out on construction sites.
Yeah.
I like to salivate over all the equipment they've got that we didn't have, like really cool man lifts and nice scaffolding. We didn't have any of that stuff.
You didn't?
No, we didn't.
What did you guys have?
Horrid,
a compass?
Horrid ladders that were really dangerous is what we had.
I'm going to pull up right here. We're going to get your stuff out. Yep. Putting it back up. Oh. We have to get the mic back from you too. Oh, you took it off already. You're good. I'm attached to mine.
Welcome to Smarty. This month, we're going to be making our own chore spin wheel. You'll notice while we make this fun activity, these icons are going to be popping up onto the screen. These correlate to specific skill sets that are in the Skills program. Skills is the ABA-based online tool that helps parents build their own teaching plan for children on the autism spectrum. If you are a Skills user, this will help you get the most out of this educational opportunity. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are a large bowl to trace, cardstock, scissors, a pencil, a ruler, a hole puncher, a metal brad, and any other arts and crafts materials you want to use to decorate your pinwheel with. So step one, you're going to take your large bowl and place it on top of the cardstock and trace the circle. Step two, you guessed it, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut along the line. Step three, you're going to fold the circle into quarters. This is the best way to make sure all the triangles within it are symmetrical. Once you folded the paper, you're going to take your ruler and you're going to trace those lines so you can actually see them on the circle. Now here comes the fun part. Take your arts and crafts materials and you're going to decorate the chore spin wheel. I used some crayons to color in every other quadrant so you could see them pop and see the difference between the different chores. Place the different adaptive skills your child is working on in the different quadrants. Once you're done decorating the circle and labeling the different chores in each quadrant, then you're going to take your scrap paper that you had left over and you're going to cut an arrow out of it. Once the arrow has been cut, you're going to take your hole puncher and hole punch on the very edge of it. This will be your spinner. Then you're going to take your arrow and your circle and line them up and take your brad and place it through and secure it. And voila, you have your finished chore spin wheel. Well, I enjoyed making this activity with you and I hope to see you soon. Until next time, guys, craft on! To find more about skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parents icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Hello and welcome. So much going on here. We're so excited to be here with you this morning. And as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, we don't have Dr. Doreen Grambichet, but we have the most wonderful substitution. Evelyn Kung is with us. She's the clinical director of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So welcome. Thank you for being available to come back and do this with us. We are going to jump right in here. So got some questions here that have already been sent in, but you guys can still be sending questions in, yes? So the first question is preschool important for children on the autism spectrum? What is recommended, a preschool for children on the spectrum or a neurotypical preschool? The hours of this preschool conflict with my son's ABA hours. As of now, our ABA provider has only mornings available. I would hate to lose them. They're amazing. Okay. This is a great question because there's a lot of different components to this, right?
There definitely is.
And I think this is a typical question for young families with young kiddos.
Yeah, and I think it's a typical question because we all expect our children to go to school.
And the school expects them to come to school, right?
Yes.
And they'll breathe down your neck heavy and hard trying to get you to bring your child to school. Plus, which is a lot of commercials that run on TV and say a child is not successful without preschool, right?
Yes.
So we're all fed this, which is, it's not untrue, but there's some considerations with kids with autism.
Definitely. So with kids with autism, what we know is that they don't learn just like their neurotypical counterparts. And so it really depends on what level your child is at. Being in preschool itself, just putting them in there without anything is not going to be helpful for any kid on the spectrum because we already know that our kids don't learn like other kids. Other neurotypical kids see somebody model their behavior, learn language, pick up information, and our kids have that communication deficit and that social communication deficit of attending to a peer. They have a tendency to attend to what is intrinsically motivating to them. And a lot of times it's not listening to a teacher, an adult, understanding that they want to please authority. All of those concepts are really not there for most of our kids. And so it's important that, you know, when you're working with your ABA provider, your child has to have really basic components in place to be able to really benefit from that preschool setting. If they don't look at peers, if they don't model, if they don't imitate, if they're not understanding instructions, all of those things really are what you're supposed to be getting from preschool. And if they can't do any of those things, then it's not beneficial for the child to be in preschool.
And I want to go so far as, and tell me if I'm exaggerating here, but sometimes it can actually make things harder for the kid.
Oh, it makes it harder because depending on the level, if they have a lot of challenges and a lot of stereotypy, what ends up happening is they get if they're quiet, they just get pushed aside and left alone, and they're good because there's no reported problem behavior, but they're not getting any intervention. They're just sitting in the corner with whatever thing that they want to be attending to, and that's it. And so there's no benefit for those kids. For the kids that are higher functioning and actually have some people skills and observation skills and some language, they go into the setting and they see that nobody wants to do what they want to do. And that is completely disturbing too, because those kids get really angry. And that's typically when those kids actually start admitting behaviors. And they're challenging behaviors because either they're going up to a kid and knocking their Legos over just because they know that's the only way the kid's going to attend to them. Yeah. And it's usually attending by yelling or no, or, you know, the teacher comes over because they're told on. Yeah. Or they're usually, they learn to do all the wrong behaviors. Mm-hmm. And that is a problem because we don't want them to think that the only way they can interact is to be destroying someone's play creation or just being, or knowing that if I come up to someone, they'll walk away. You know, just being used to those types of behaviors. Do not want that. But on the other hand, if you have a child who's really high functioning, I have to say, actually for all kids, what they do get from the school, I'm going to be really honest, whether they're high or low or any level of behavior, the one thing they do get from school is they just get used to being around people.
Yeah.
And that is helpful, but that's something they can do later.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of other challenges and barriers that prevent them from learning. And in that one-to-one ABA, especially in that slot where they're really young and their brains are sponges and can learn anything, you want to make that time as useful as possible. And if it is in an ABA program where you can see that they're learning consistently and the most, that's great, because when they're young, that's the time when they're not that far behind yet. Yeah. And you can really teach as much as you can during that point. They'll have many years of school to learn other things.
Yeah. I offer up as an example, what happened for us was that at 3, when we were starting ABA, there was a big discussion about school wanted our son for an 8-hour program a day. And we were looking at the studies and we wanted ABA. We wanted 40 hours of ABA. And it was quite a tussle. School even sued us. I'm going to be honest about that. They filed suit against us because I was throwing studies around, and I think they wanted to shut me up. I can't know that for sure, but that's how I feel. In any case, we made the decision and decided to do intensive ABA in that first year because he wasn't ready to do anything. He couldn't do anything with other kids around. He would chase them and go, and pretend to be a monster, and that was his relationship with other children. So we decided, no, we need to give him some skills first. What somebody had said to me was, imagine if we said to you, we want you to downhill ski and we're not going to teach you how to do it, but we'll put you at the top of the hill, let you go. How successful will you be, and how many times will you be willing to try before you go, no thanks, I don't want to? And that's what it would be like for him going to preschool with other kids. He did intensive at home because that's all that was available to us at the time. I would have loved center. But we did it at home, 40 hours, and a year later, he had been offered the most restrictive environment, was considered moderate to severe. A year later, on that basis that he had from that 40 hours of card, he was reevaluated and offered full inclusion in preschool, which was amazing. That was miraculous. So at 4, he did go to preschool, and he was ready then. And was so successful in preschool, and then went to kindergarten on time with neurotypical peers, with an aid, but on time with an aid. And I always think back to that first year, and if I had listened, and I'm a former teacher, I have nothing against schools, but if I had listened to the school in that year, I don't think we would have gotten where we got.
Yeah.
But it's really, as you said, it's dependent on the child, where they are, where their skill set is at. At 4, he was craving other children and wanting to be around them. It was exactly, and Card pointed that out to me and said, no, he's ready now. But he had not been ready the year before.
And the thing is, when you look at neurotypical development, when you look at all the developmental skills for just any child, one of the sections of development that they look at is readiness, school readiness. And there's a lot of things in there that a lot of schools will look at when they're doing those developmental evaluations and saying, like, are you ready for school? And if you use that same developmental evaluation for our kids on the spectrum, they don't have those skills. Yeah. So they're not ready for school. And the thing is, we as a society are just programmed to think that school is going to be beneficial. And it is. I mean, I'm a fully, when school works, it really works. But if your child's not ready for school and they need an alternative way to learn, and they need an alternative way to get those school readiness skills, you want to give it to them, because it's actually not fair to put them in a setting without those readiness skills that neurotypical kids are evaluated for, and just say, here, just try, just go. And for me, I want school to be a really good experience for all kids. And so many times our kids go to school and they just have really bad experiences and they don't want to be there. So when I'm working with families and saying, like, is he ready? I always say, let's get him so ready that once he starts, he's so successful that he wants to be there and he's
loves it.
Succeeding.
Yes.
And he can see all of the benefits right away. And that's why when we do intakes with families, especially the little ones, if the kids are in school, I always ask the parents, is school really helping? Is it beneficial, and how? Yeah. And so many families will look at me and be like, well, No, I don't think he's really learning anything there. It's good that he goes because that's one thing he's doing like his neurotypical peers.
Yeah.
Now I say that, well, let's use the time in another way
Yeah.
because he does have so many years ahead where he will be in school.
Yeah. But school should never be a place where we park our kids at any age, at any ability. And if you feel that and I know parents all the time will write in and say, I feel like that's what's happening, that my child has been parked. We never want that, but especially in the beginning when we're setting a tone. That year that we took and did the intensive ABA, then when he went to school, he was excited to go to school. He couldn't wait. He didn't know his days of the week yet, but he learned them because he was like, is it a school day? Is today a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday? Because then it's a school day. That's the kind of thing we want to see from kids. And when they're ready, it should be that.
Yeah. And then the other part of this question was, should you go to a school with kids on the spectrum or not?
Yeah.
And when we're talking at preschool, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is, can they learn from other kids? And a lot of times what I always joke about is one of the first lessons that we teach kids coming into an ABA program is just basic non-vocal imitation. It's just, let's do what I do. And I actually spend a lot of time with kids teaching them this because even if a kid does not speak, if you can teach them to imitate their peers, that parent can take them to any birthday party, can take them to any event because they see other kids jumping, they go jump. They see other kids doing arts and crafts, they will just go do it. They may not like it after a while, but they know what they're supposed to be doing because they automatically, the imitation is so generalized and so automatic that the parents always tell me, wow, he just went and did what the other kids did. And
Right.
It didn't matter that he doesn't have any vocal speech.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And especially at that age, there are a lot of kids who can talk but don't too. So it doesn't actually look outside of the norm.
Yeah.
And so when we teach kids in an ABA program how to imitate at that level, you really actually do not want them in with those kids that have all the spectrum behaviors because they go to school and they learn how to flap their hands
Right.
and throw things and do things that maybe was not a part of their repertoire at all.
Right.
And, you know, I know that there are all different types of schools out there. There are ABA schools out there. There's a lot of different things. But I always just say, like, if you have taught your kid how to imitate and to really learn from anybody, most of the families will choose not to put their kids with the kids that have the non-typical behaviors because when they can put their kid with a typical behavior and their kid blends right in, you know, with or without speech, it's just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And the kids actually, when they have the imitative ability at such a high level, they actually stay with their neurotypical peers for pretty much forever because they start learning everything in that way. They might not have vocal speech and they might have to learn how to communicate differently, but for the most part, if they're able to do what everybody else is doing, on many ways, they're at par with the kids.
And it's so important for us to all realize that schools still haven't evolved enough. A lot of times they still have this model of let's segregate the kids, and you know, there are some kids that need to be someplace else for various and sundry reasons, whether they have assaultive behavior management issues where they'll hit themselves or another person and it's a safety issue. There are kids that have medical issues. There are kids whose sensory cannot hang in a typical classroom, right? So we're not saying that all children need to be and I used to say that. I used to say, let's include everybody, right? And I now have learned that for everybody, that isn't necessarily the case.
Exactly.
But we do have to be careful and not allow schools to segregate and put individuals on the spectrum, just check a box and they go over here and they're separate. That isn't good for anyone.
And in the same way, you're not going to take a kid that shouldn't be included and include them. Like I saw a parent last week who was insisting that her child be in a typical classroom, and this is a very high functioning girl and she gets a lot of anxiety, and I could see it just stressing her out completely.
Yeah.
And you know, it's good that she's with her neurotypical peers and she's learned that, but I wanted to give her a break.
Yeah.
You know, and I talked to the mom and I said there needs to be a way to give her a break during the day because she takes in so much, but she doesn't know how to manage it, and that's when the self-injurious behavior comes and everything else. And at a level, she has a lot of abilities, but maybe the full day, you know, included schedule is not for her, at least at that moment, until we teach her to manage some of these anxiety behaviors.
We really, I mean, an IEP it stands for Individualized Education Planner Program. And a lot of times that people try to automate things to make it easier and faster, right? But we can't. We have to stop and consider this individual being, what would be right for them. And I know sometimes it's hard to convince a school because they create a program. And it's like, these kids fit this program. And a lot of times the program doesn't fit any kid, right? As parents, we have to advocate and go, no, it's called an IEP for a reason. Here's what my child needs. We're not trying to fit my child to a program. You got to fit your program to my child.
Yeah, and I think that's a misnomer that is a lot of families just feel like, or they're told by the school, no, your child has to do X, Y, and Z. And then the other voice comes where when they get to us, like this morning even, 7 a.m., I got a call from a parent. School already started in some parts of the country.
Yeah.
And she called and she's just like, my child's going to high school, and she went to the class and she's a model, like kid, but she's in a special education placement and she hates it there.
Yeah.
Completely. And we need to find something else for her. And this is high school.
Yeah.
And I just said, okay, let's figure out another model.
Yeah.
Let's use some school time, some this time, some that time. And I was like, what are you open to? And the mom was just saying, oh my goodness, I didn't even know. And this is a parent who's really well educated. But I just said, no, let's just make her time, wherever she is at, the most beneficial as possible.
What a great way of looking at it. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with a question that's just come in about someone wants to know, will my son get better? He was diagnosed at 2 years old. And there's more to it, but I think that's the heart of every parent's question, right?
Yeah.
Is my child going to get better? Where are we going to end up? So we're going to come back and talk about that and some more questions that you guys have written in. Stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, how on earth can I afford ABA therapy for my child? Well, the short answer is you can't. No one can. It's really expensive and it's overwhelming to most families. But the story doesn't end there, fortunately. The first thing that I want you to think about is tapping insurance resources. So many insurance companies are paying for ABA therapy right now. So that's your first best bet. Make sure and see if your insurance company is providing benefits for ABA therapy, and check back often. Now, if you see that you don't have insurance right now for ABA, don't panic, there are still other resources. The next place to go is to your local support groups and ask them what local resources there are. That's a great place to ask for information because often states and even counties have support for ABA. And then beyond that, you might consider applying for grants. There are many fabulous grants out there to help you to get support for your ABA therapy. But most important, it's absolutely essential that you get ABA services for your child. We know that that's essential for all of our children and that you won't be able to do it on your own. So seek out those services and support groups that will help you to fund your ABA journey. It's really important to remember that all behaviors happen for a reason.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live. And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
We're back, and we're here with Evelyn Kung. She is the clinical director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and she's answering your questions. Now, we had a question that came in on Facebook. Somebody wants to know, will my son get better? He was diagnosed at 2 years old. Will he get better as he gets older? And they're watching right now, so we can ask them questions, and they can write back into us.
Okay, it's amazing technology.
Isn't it? It's awfully fun.
It just depends what intervention he gets. It really, really does. I mean, I'm an ABA provider. I know other people who are anti-ABA. And the honest effect is that ABA is the only research-backed therapy that shows that it works with the kids. And for me, the younger the kids get intervention, the more improvement you see. In every level, every child, no matter how severe or not severe, every child who's really young, you want that intensive therapy and you want a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to get as much as possible, because these kids all can learn. They just learn very differently. And it's figuring out your child and figuring out, like, what are his strengths? Is he a visual learner? Is he an auditory learning? Are there delays? Is there auditory processing delay? And just figuring those things out. And so a lot of times, and if you get the right intervention, he will get better. How much better? Like, how independent he will be? We don't know that. But the thing is, every child actually with good ABA makes progress, every single one. And we've seen kids come in with severe challenges, both like on the biomedical end and in the learning end, but they still make improvement. And the goal that we have here at CARD is that, hey, you know what, we'll take any person and we'll try to figure out how they learn. And once we figure out how they learn, then it's all about teaching them, starting with the things that matter to the child, so that they have the motivation to do that type of learning. And then once they can do the things with, that really motivate them, then we start slowly generalizing to maybe what, the household wants or needs, and then society. But it really is one step at a time, but it's really doing something right now.
Can we talk a little bit about the science some more too? Because I apologize up front, but years ago, a mom that my son had been in kindergarten with her daughter, she came up to me in a grocery store and she said, now my son has been diagnosed. And she said, Shannon, I know you know about this, so what should I do? And I was so polite to her and I said, well, you really want to consider doing an intensive ABA program, and you really want to consider doing 40 hours because he's so young, and you really, and I voiced it all in that way. 2 years later, I ran into her again, and I thought she came running across this facility towards me, and I thought, oh, she's going to come and hug me for my brilliant advice. And she came over and with her finger pointed and yelled at me, and she said, how dare you? You made it sound like, well, I could do this or I could do that, and you knew better. You knew that I needed to take such action that it was like the same as if my house was on fire. Why didn't you tell me? You have to do this, and you have to do it now, and you're going to have to fight for it. But if you do, your life will change and your child's life will change. Why didn't you give me the 411? Wow. And she said, don't you ever talk to me again. I came to you and I asked you. So I just apologize now to parents and say, I don't mamby-pamby. You need to look at the science. That what Evelyn just said is absolutely true. Every single child who gets good quality ABA will make progress.
Definitely.
Definitely. But the science shows that at 2 or 3 or 4, if you jump in and you do around 40 hours of good quality ABA and you get involved so that they're every waking hour, that roughly somewhere between 42 and 49% of those kids never need anything ever again after a few years, between 2 and 5 years of that intensively. Now, that's almost half. Mm-hmm. That's significant.
Yes.
To me as a parent, that's like, don't walk, run, get this started, because it will be the best parent training you've ever done and your child will make progress. All kids don't get to that point, but a lot of them get to a point where they lead full, rich lives.
Definitely.
With a little bit of support. And then there's another group of kids that usually have, they're twice exceptional, or they have comorbidities where they have other things besides autism, and they still make tremendous progress. Things like toileting, things that affect the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I always say that the most challenged kids that come in, when they leave, usually we always say we've got them a way to communicate, and if a child has a way to communicate, they don't have behaviors, like
That's
severe
right.
behaviors. Severe problem behaviors are not there if they can communicate what they want and need. They usually have a lot of the independent skills, so eating, sleeping, toileting, all of those, so that they can be as independent as possible and they're not relying on somebody else. And if they can have those two components, they can actually go and live in any environment.
Now, we had a follow-up that came in from this parent, and I thank you for writing in and saying what the issue really is so that we can really attack this. She says, most of us can't afford ABA, and that's the issue. I'm sending you an air hug, because it's not most of you, nobody can afford ABA. If people had to pay out of pocket for ABA, I don't know anybody who could afford this. And that's not your fault. It's a problem. Mm-hmm. Are you here in the United States? That's my next question to you, and write me back as quick as you can, because if you're here in the United States, most of our children have access to insurance now in the United States where you can get ABA, whether it's through Medicaid or private insurance. And there are places that you can get grants to pay for the copays. And let me just tell you, I am happy to be on the phone with you privately, and we'll figure out what is available to you, because more is available to you than you currently know.
And this is a good time, because right now, pretty much almost everybody has some kind of level of access to it.
But you may not know it, and that's very common still, that things have changed and things have shifted and you have access. You're in Texas. I got you. Please, send me an email right now, and then you and I can talk personally later on. And there's my email, s.penrod@autism-live.com. And let's get you hooked up with some resources so that you can see all the ways that other people will either pay for this or help you to pay for it. Because we can't allow money to stop you from getting the thing that you want. And there are grants, there is insurance, there is Medicaid, there's a DARS grant in Texas to get you started. There's all kinds of things.
And it's rough and it's hard to get.
Rough.
It is very rough.
It's going to be a fight, but it's possible.
But there is a possibility there. And right now is a good time because there are these things. This time, I always tell parents, if you're thinking about doing it later, this might not be available to you later.
That's absolutely
We do
true.
not know where the whole realm of finance and ABA is going.
Yeah.
So I tell people, do it now, because in 5 years, they may not be here.
And now, if you've got a 2-year-old that's aging towards a 3-year-old, that's the window where you can have the best expectation for the best possible outcomes if you start now. So email me and let's have a conversation so that we can get you moving in that direction. And for those of you who are watching who are like, yeah, but I don't live in Texas and I don't live in the United States, I want to say that there are other things in place where you can get started anyway.
Yeah.
Before there was insurance, there were families that went on their own, and they got, we know Kiwanis clubs that have sponsored a kid. We know sororities that have sponsored a kid where the parents had materials, books back then, but now we've got e-learnings for you where you can train a team. You can make this happen one way or the other. Parents have done it.
I had a parent who went to the local college. It was a liberal arts college near their house in the middle of the country.
Yep.
Really out and far away. And got a professor it was an occupational therapy class. Mm-hmm. And basically got her son to be the practicum site. So,
amazing.
So we had all these students come in for a couple of years, and they were there for 2 years, and they got college credit. And so the family didn't have to pay anything, but the family just paid for the card fee for the supervision and the training. But otherwise, like the whole staffing of the 40 hours was fully funded by a school of students.
Amazing.
And it was amazing. And those students, when they went away and they came back, and they said they got hired so fast because in all of their occupations, and in that group it was OTs, some teachers, and some special ed teachers, they all knew how to handle kids.
Yeah.
So they got recognized so fast that they knew exactly how to motivate a child to do anything, that it really benefited them later in life. But this family was amazing that they got this to happen. So it takes a lot of creativity and a lot of endurance and not giving up. But there are ways that you can get it funded. We've had families, who are overseas. And we actually had a family who was here who moved back to India, because in India, there's a whole population of people who don't have jobs, and you can pay them at a fraction of the cost of here. So they just pay for the supervision, and then their 40 hours for their child was at a much lower rate in India, you know. So there's a lot of different ways to do this.
And it's about getting creative. But I have to say to you, lots of parents have done it before you, so you don't have to reinvent a wheel. But if this is an issue for you, don't let money stop you. It will be the biggest heartache for you down the road when you see other kids making progress and you think, oh, how did we not have that? Nobody has the money for it. It's not just you. We all have to figure that out, and lots of parents have been figuring it out. So, call me or write me. Call me. You know how they call me. Okay. So, and we did have another person who wrote in on YouTube and said, my child is autistic and has ADHD. How do you treat that? It's pretty much the same things that we've been talking about. Your question when I said this to you in the break was, you said, how old? Because it makes a difference.
It makes a difference, the age of the child. Because there's a component of ADHD that the inattention is not actually really ADHD. It's just a part of the autism, the executive functioning deficit. Their inattention, their ability to follow and be able to focus. There's a whole subset of ADHD kids here, neurotypical ADHD, that actually have visual perception deficits. And people think that it's inattentive because they're just moving around and can't focus. But the minute you get actually their vision tested and you realize it's a vision issue, that there's training and vision therapy and everything for all their perceptual skills, and suddenly they can attend now.
Yeah.
And so there's all these different forms of what's ADHD out there. But when you get a real pure ADHD kid and ASD kid, I was telling Shannon, I love these kids. Because these kids are so fun and so creative. They're exhausting,
yes.
but they're so fun. And it's just like figuring out a way, like depending on their age, how to get them integrated in. Like if this child needs to be moving, then let's figure out how in that second grade classroom they can keep moving while doing their work.
Yeah.
And I had a kid who could do work if she was standing up,
yep.
but she couldn't do work if she was sitting. She
yep.
could not sit for the life of her. And she was my true ADHD kid.
Yeah.
But so we had to actually put into our IEP that she's allowed to stand up.
And even in the office world, we see this now, that there are some people who are more productive if they have a standing desk.
Yes.
Some people need it because their back has issues, but some people greatly prefer it.
Yes.
Honestly, we had a producer on the show who loved to stand. Our control room wasn't set up for this, but he loved to stand. He was working here a year before we got him to sit in the chair and call the show from a chair. It was just how he preferred it. And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
But we as a society need to be a little bit more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
We always teach in flexibility to our kids, but we need to be flexible. So I love this.
Yeah, so it just depends on the age and because as you age, the requirements for you to really focus and be just in a setting for a long periods of time really does increase. If they're really young, I always say if they're coming in at 3, 4, 5, are they really ADHD? I don't know. Because a lot of times it's just the autism part where they're just inattentive or they don't know how to wait. And so it's teaching them that aspect, and suddenly they don't have the ADHD diagnosis anymore.
Yeah.
But then you get into the school age where you see that this kid just does better if he's standing or if he gets a little break in between, where he's able to walk around. And then you start working with the IEP team saying, how can we integrate all of this in? Because these kids are the most creative. The ADHD kids are so creative. It's amazing.
Love it, love it, love it. I'm so glad that you're here to answer this next question, because I've come to you with this before. Somebody wrote in and said, I would like to make an appointment to see the therapist, ABA. Can I call to make appointment, or do I have to go online? It's too difficult. Here at Card Now, we have a portal. When you go online, there's the place where you can click on it to begin the process of saying that you want to have somebody seen by somebody, you want to start ABA therapy. But it's not everybody's preference, but it's not the only way that they can do things. And so I know you had helped me once before. What would be your best advice if somebody is there and they're not an online person?
If they're not an online person, I would say pick up the telephone. Or if there's a local office near you, go and just say, hey, I'm not. Be really honest, and a lot of times you walk into these ABA companies and everybody's in the early 20s and you wonder, like, who is this 20-year-old? And I remember being told that.
The 20-year-old,
the 20-year-old. I'm not anymore, but it's like walk in and just say, hey, I'm not an online person and I just need another help. And we will provide another way, whether it's you to go in person and somebody helps you put everything into the computer, or if you want to call and just have a discussion on how this works. There are other ways of doing it. A lot of people say, oh, it's so cold. Actually, I've had parents say it's so cold to go through the computer. And I say, you know what? The purpose of the computer is so that you can enroll at any time.
Yeah.
You know,
Even
it's
if
open
it's 2 in the
24 hours a
morning.
day, so
Yeah.
you can be doing this at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Because if you have a child on the spectrum, you don't have time.
Right. That's sometimes the only time that you do have. And I will say too, if you need to, you can always email me if you need help figuring something out. But don't, if you get to the 20-year-old person, and believe me, I love 20-year-olds, right? But a lot of times there's this shades of gray thing that I notice with that somebody will be told at 20, here are the rules. And what I love about 20-year-olds is they're like, those are the rules. And they miss shades of gray sometimes with the rules. The rule may say at any ABA provider that you must enter online, right? That doesn't mean that you have to.
Yeah.
So if you meet a 20-year-old who says, no, I'm sorry, the only way to do it is online, ask for somebody else. I always love on Oprah, they would always talk about don't take a no from somebody who wasn't authorized to give a yes.
Mm-hmm.
That don't be afraid to ask for accommodations. It's really good practice for all of us to have the opportunity to say, I'm going to need something different. I have to do that in my life. I hate it whenever I'm someplace at an IEP or whatever, where somebody starts reading something that I need to be able to make a decision on, and I don't have it to look at, and there's other noises. I can't do that. And I always say to them, I have to stop you. Can I get a copy of that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to need to have a copy to read along with you if it's that you want me to make a decision here. If you just want me to listen to you and later on I'll make a decision, that's fine too. But if this is time sensitive, you're going to have to give me a copy.
Yeah.
That's the only way it works for me.
And I always say, and this doesn't matter, this is anywhere you go in school. I always say that it's frustrating when you encounter these situations, but your best bet is to give a little honey, because
Yes,
you have
that's
to
true.
be really nice to the person. And if you're really nice to the person, they're more willing to help you.
That's absolutely true.
And
But you
it's-
can give honey while you say, is there somebody else I
Yes,
can talk to?
exactly. And just
You
doing
don't have to be rude.
There's a way to do it in a nice way.
Yes.
And I think that will just, every setting, ABA, school, wherever you are, if you're going to be asking for an alternative, just try to put on your best face and be sweet and just be able to do it. It's so frustrating for so many families. They're like, oh, I'm so tired of this because everywhere I go, I get these roadblocks. And I understand that description, but really, you just get more if you're giving that a little bit of honey.
I
Really sweet.
absolutely agree. Especially when you think about people who are in this field. I always like to remind myself and other parents that people who are working in the field of autism chose to be in this field because they want to help somebody. They don't want to deliberately make your life miserable. They are on our team.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that they're always going to give us the thing that we want right in that moment in the way that we want it. But if we remember that we're all on the same team and we just keep the lines of communication as open as we can, be as clear as we can, I think you'll find that especially in the field of ABA, people are nice.
Yeah.
And that they will respond well to that. I also want to say that Dr. Granpiche wrote in and said that she's watching. She's on a plane going to Seattle. Hello. So I'm going to move, but I love that you're watching. I'm going to move on to the next question. You know how I am. I like to get as much out of you guys as possible. So I've got a question here. My 4-year-old was diagnosed with ASD. He has echolalia, repeats phrases, but can speak when he wants something or wants to show us something. He is taking Resperdal to calm himself and concentrate, is a bit hyper. And they said, how bad is he? And I want to say that this is a thing I think that runs through all parents. It's that thing of, I don't know where my child is. It's one of the reasons why I love Skills. Skills is like your mall map. Once in the mall you go and it's like, well, I want to get to Macy's, but I got to know I'm here first in order to get to Macy's. I don't know of anything else besides Skills that provides that mall map for you for autism. Once you've answered all the questions, you can look on the map and see, okay, your child is here and we want to get here. And then you get an idea of how far away from it you are. We all want to know that. And I know that makes clinicians a little, I don't know, nervous when we want to know, where is my child?
Clinicians should not get nervous at that kind of
Okay,
question.
good. I'm glad. I'm glad that
should
you
not.
say that.
But I think that, the idea that I think some people do get nervous because a lot of ABA providers aren't trained in development.
Oh.
And I think that's why, like, whenever we get our new BCBA in, a lot of them will ask, like, how do I learn this? And, you know, and I always say, remember that freshman year psych class that talked about development?
Yeah.
This is where the knowledge you're drawing from. But I always say, go and hang out with the kids, and you'll figure out what they can do, and then that becomes your standard.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what age, if you know kind of generally what they should be doing, you have a, you know, that nervousness should not be there.
Okay, so
You
for
know.
this guy, for a 4-year-old with ASD that has echolalia, but speaks when he wants something, so he's manding, or wants to show something, and it's great that he's wanting to show something. That's a good sign, right? How does the parent walk away? Is it useful even to know that, because the parent is asked, how bad is he? I'm using their words.
So I actually don't like that, to use how bad is he. I just say, where is he? And so in skills, what Shannon was talking about is, if you are 4 years old, you take assessment questions up to the age of 5, because that's what a 4-year-old is learning, everything up to the age of 5. Or if you're 2, you're learning everything up to 3. So it gives you an idea versus the general neurotypical child, where your child is at. For this child, I would say that if he's able to make requests, vocalize and talk, and make requests for what he wants, he's got the basic vocal, so people understand him. So he has basic speech, which is the most common form of communication. If he is knowing when, like, he wants to show you things and talks about things that he wants, that's even more amazing, because that means he has some kind of social need to share.
Yeah.
And one of the deficits for autism at a very low level, or at 18 months they notice, is, you know, the whole idea of joint attention, or wanting to share, not always sharing things because you want it, but sharing just to share it, and getting that satisfaction from someone else knowing.
Yeah, it's a
So
great sign.
that shows you that he is in tune to a large degree with other people. He wants that, you know, that interaction. He wants to show somebody something that he thinks is amazing. So those two skills together means that he has a lot of potential. He really has a lot of potential. But now a lot of it is probably very concrete. It's very like what he's learning. So it's the abstract things, or it's maybe the form of communication and teaching and how it's coming, that he's not able to tune in to what he needs to tune into. And that is where ABA really is the solution, because ABA does deliver small components at a time. So it's not coming in an overwhelming force, but it's coming in small components. And if he can fit it into his repertoire and figure out how it fits in, he's going to start using all that information.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that he's not that bad, you know, because he has the core skills of, he can talk, and he has that skill of, I want to please somebody else, and I want to share what I like with somebody else. And that means he's in tune with other people. That means he's somewhat social.
And so instead of asking how bad he is, really for parents, what we need to start thinking is, how much progress can my child make, which really is hand in hand with how much therapy can I get my child as soon as possible.
He needs as much as he can, because he can learn, but for some reason the way learning is coming isn't coming the normal way. So now you want him to get as much therapy so he can get just the basics tools. He needs to know what words mean, and how to ask questions, and how to get information when he doesn't understand what's happening. So he needs all of those skills, because once he gets those skills, he's probably going to be very talkative and want to interact with people.
But you got to get the help and the support, and you really have to do it now, because at 4, you're staring down the barrel at going to school. You don't necessarily have to go to school at 5, but by 6, you got to be at school. And so now you've got more time, and he's not as far behind. Every week that you wait, he's that much further behind. You got to make up that week on top of everything else that he's behind.
And you want to do it now, because at some point, let's say if he starts interacting and people aren't reciprocating, he may choose not to interact.
Right.
And you don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
You want his interaction to be positive, to be momentum, to give him momentum to learn more, to want to interact more, to get that drive. So you really need to give him those basic skills, that basic language, that basic the how to figure out rules in society, and so that he can go out there and do what he wants to do in terms of, share with things with what he wants, and then learn the things that he's really not that interested in either. Just
Right.
like the rest of us.
Like the rest of us.
Just like the rest of us.
Amazing. Somehow we're out of time. I don't know how that could possibly be, but this has been so much fun, and thank you so much for being here and filling in for Dr. Grampuchet, who, as you just heard, is on a plane. And to Dr. Grampuchet, we miss you, but so thrilled that you were here and able to do this. This
Thank
was
you so
such a
much.
great talk. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspot-Jackson will be joining me, and we're going to be doing In the News first, and then first up after that will be Jenny Palmietto. She's going to be talking to us about the Autism and Love Conference, which will be awesome to talk
great.
about autism and love. And then a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about some new books that are coming out from one of the most fabulous publishers of books about autism. So stick with us.
Hi, this is Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts, frequently asked questions and answers for the autism journey. Now this one is specifically for teens and adults with autism. I get this question all the time: what's new and exciting in the medical world today for teens and adults with autism? So let's talk about them. TMS, transmagnetic stimulation therapy, is something that is really exciting. I met with the author John Robeson. Look me in the eye. He's a gentleman with Asperger's, and something I hope all of our kids to strive and grow up and be just like him. He's amazing. He talked about TMS therapy and how he became more social aware. His smile was more natural, and I definitely can better understand things around him in those social settings. Another really great treatment that we're seeing just a ton of research on in the last 3 years is cerebral folate autoimmunity. You know, in the 90s, they started putting folate in all of our different foods and products. Well, some people, they have found out, and specifically a high percentage of children with autism don't process folate how they should. Go figure. They don't do it the way the books say it's going to happen. So cerebral folate autoimmunity is just a really exciting new therapeutic to work with your physician on and to look to see if your child is a candidate for that therapy. And another common thing that we're seeing in teens and adults, and we've talked about it before in Talk of Facts, is seizures. Very serious issue that needs to be looked at. Abnormal brain waves or brain patterns or epileptic activity in the brain definitely needs to be addressed in children with autism. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I know doctors that can go through and work and look at the child and perform a 24-hour EEG. What they're finding with some of these anticonvulsant or seizure medications is kids start to make great gains in speech, cognition, sleep, learning, by treating any type of seizure activity. So, and the other issue is pandas, not the cute fuzzy bears that we see in the zoo, but an issue that is happening with a lot of teens and adults on the spectrum, where you see a dramatic change in behaviors with these individuals, and often they have an inappropriate immune response. TACA has a great white paper, so you can go look up in the pandas definition what to test and treat for and talk to your doctor about. But know that if you see an extreme swing in behavior with a child that goes from one place to a very negative place, we're seeing a lot of teens positively responding to treatments for pandas. And the last treatment I wanted to talk about, and I'm super excited about, and this happens to not just work with younger kids on the autism spectrum, but also older children on the spectrum, teens and adults. It's called mendability. And a great study just came out of UCI in May 2013 about a multisensory approach for individuals with autism. The whole premise behind the therapy is very simple, making it a sensory-rich environment so neural connections can make new pathways or at least connect in that individual. So kids with sensory issues, auditory listening issues, speech issues, they seem to really just respond to mendability, and I was so excited to see that new research. More research is being done on it, and the beautiful part about mendability is it's something parents can do on their own, administer with their child, and be connected to their kid as partners in the autism journey. Don't forget in any therapy or medical intervention to work with your physician and to do proper testing to know what your child needs and what treatments to pursue under a physician's care. So there's so many new things. I could go on for hours about new treatments and excitement, but there's the top ones that just have me so geeked here. But that's another Talk of Fact. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time and on Real Journey, Real Questions and Answers to help your autism journey.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Oswald-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
Hello, my dear.
Thank you so much for holding the fort down last week while I was away.
Yeah.
It was fun to Skype in with you, sort
Okay.
of.
Did you have a good trip?
It was a great trip. It was amazing. I met so many families. I met so many therapists. It was really wonderful. I've come back with some version of the plague.
Right, pink eye.
Well, I don't know if it's pink eye or just that it's allergies or whatever, but I'm
Okay.
staying as far away from everyone as I possibly
Okay.
can.
Right, I'll
And
try
no
not
one,
to touch
and
you.
I'm not touching doorknobs, and we've wiped the studio down with wipes. You have no idea what we did to try to make it so that I think it's just allergies.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be a lot worse if it,
Right.
But anyway, but I get so paranoid about that because I hate it if somebody is like with pink eye and they're all like, yeah, I got pink eye, but you're like, what? I want that? I don't want
We'll
that.
all try to put a
Yes,
ball around you and not come
I
near.
consider a bubble here, and I'm
Okay.
wearing my glasses.
Great,
and
great. Well, it's great to hear you and Dr. Evelyn in the last hour. Some very good information covered there.
She's lovely.
Yeah.
I always enjoy time with her, and of course, we always enjoy it when Dr. Grampuchet is here. But that can't always be possible.
No.
And so, but really fabulous to have her here today and answering questions. And we've got some great guests today. But
We
first, we've got
do.
some in the
We
news.
do. We have great guests in the studio, and we'll be coming back after In the News with them. But first, we have a story about that findings suggesting that autism anxiety have similar roots in the brain.
Yeah, and if you think, this didn't surprise
Not me
right?
at all.
Because
my
I always
son
want.
suffers from severe anxiety.
Well, and it always I always want to know which comes first, the chicken or the egg, and they're saying in this study if you have an infant who seems anxious that could be a warning sign.
Right. Now, what is an infant that seems anxious, though? I'm wondering, does that mean more crying, more? Because it's hard to say what
Yeah.
exactly is anxiety in an
But
infant.
I have been around babies. That's true, and it's hard to say, but I've been around babies and sometimes twins, and where you do notice that there are some kids that if a noise happens, they're very sensory reactive, that they'll scream or cry or whatever, and that other babies that are just those. I like to call them the blob babies that are just along for the ride.
Right.
A lot of times these are the second babies that they, they're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
They're just happy and nothing
easy
seems to
baby.
faze them. But there are kids who have more anxiety, and to me that makes me think there's stuff going on with that kiddo that's more than that, and maybe the more than that is the autism. I don't know.
Well, it's something to look out for, and this study sort of proved that point that these conditions, definitely mean a proclivity to autism.
Yeah, it's as they say here, a heightened risk of autism, and so I'm always about the preemptive strike anyway.
Right.
And the fact that all kids need to be screened for autism. And I know that we've battled a lot and talked about on the show that about a year ago, the people who decide the norms said they don't think that we should pre-screen all kids. Seems, and honestly, if I had more time, I would just go lay down in front of the building of the people who decided that and, pour pig's blood on myself or something to say,
Well,
hey, that's
if
wrong.
my pediatrician had screened my son at age 2, we would have known he wasn't, there was not even warning flags that went up till age 3, and I knew for a year before that. So
all children need to be
all
screened.
children need to be screened,
And this is
pediatricians
one
need to
more
do it.
thing that pushes parents to say something to the pediatrician and say, I want you to look at my child for this. And remember, none of us wants that. None of us wants to do that ever. But know that if you do pre-screen and pre-screen earlier, you will get access to treatments earlier, which statistically has been shown to mean that you won't need more services later.
Right.
So you'll be cutting things shorter and helping your kid for a better outcome if you do that.
And here's another story about chances of greater chances of having a child with autism. Hello, my mouth's not working. Women with polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, may be more likely than others to bear a child with autism, according to a study from the University of Cambridge's Autism Research Center.
And they say that 1 in 10 women of reproductive age suffers from this, and that often they're not taken as seriously by their healthcare providers to do something. And if you think about this, we've had Dr. David Berger on the show before talking about the success that he has had in the P2I study, that women come into him who already have a child on the spectrum, who maybe are having some health issues. Could be this, could be a lot of other things, and that they came to him in the beginning and said, can you help me to feel better? You've made my kid feel better. He helped those moms to get better, and they were taking data on it and realized that those women statistically weren't having the number of children with autism that they should have had according to the norms of the rest of society.
Right.
And as they looked further into it and started a study, they found that if you took care of health problems like these, like polycystic ovarian syndrome, that those women weren't as likely to have a child with autism.
Right.
By huge numbers, weren't
Right.
as likely. So I've suffered from polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Oh, did you?
I absolutely did. And what I found was difficult is that you get diagnosed with this, right? But the doctor acts like, well, that's just a thing.
And then the
And there's not
treatment,
much
though,
to
is to
do.
remove the polyps or the cysts on the ovaries,
Well, but
right?
almost nobody does that.
Okay.
Other people have hormone treatments. There are different things that you can do. And there are different dietary things to look at, but doctors tend to just be blasé about this. I think with this new caution and this new warning, I want to remind women who are of reproductive age that your health is your health is your health. If you have something going on and you're planning on having a child, whether it's polycystic ovarian syndrome or something else, see somebody like Dr. Berger who can get you as healthy as possible, because it makes a difference.
Yeah,
Not only in autism, but the chance of having a child who has juvenile diabetes
right,
or other
everything.
things. Yeah.
Everything.
So, and that's coming to us from Healthline. Want to say that Spectrum News was the first story about anxiety. So if you want more information
right.
about those,
Our viewers can look that up.
but we always like to end on some more upbeat things.
Right. And we've got two really upbeat stories. You have an article, I don't have it here with me, about the father whose daughter was not allowed to participate in a program. And so what he did was, necessity is a mother invention. He came up with it himself. He's an archaeologist. And so what did he do, Shannon?
He said, let's start this camp, this experience, and allow children to come along with archaeologists, and we'll have some things for them to dig up and to learn about archaeology. As you said, necessity, the mother of invention. You know, what I love about this is that the dad could have spent the whole summer railing at the summer camp that didn't want his daughter. But
Exactly. And his daughter is 19 with not only autism, but she's blind.
And instead he said, okay, if it doesn't exist, then I'm going to make it, and made that opportunity for other
And that's
families.
coming to us out of Florida,
Florida.
correct?
Merritt Island, Florida.
Is there a date for, I think there's a date for when certain things are happening on the second page,
October 20th.
Right.
They will welcome 150 families to Sam's house at Pine Island for the big event. Free activities, artifact excavations, spear throwing, talking to paleontologists about fossils. If you're into that kind of thing, this is heaven.
Yeah, this sounds like something every kid would love.
Absolutely. They love to dig things up and talk about dinosaurs and dinosaur teeth, and absolutely love it. The event welcomes kids 5 to 17 and adults 18 to 22. And they can be enrolled in school, including homeschoolers. Isn't that nice and lovely? And there's also, if you go to Archaeologists for Autism, their website, Archaeologists for Autism, you can register for the event and fill out the application. Lovely, lovely thing. Love that dad getting it done,
Love
right?
the dad, right. We have another wonderful story coming to us out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and about an employee at a grocery store in Baton Rouge who helped who let an autistic teen help him stock the shelves. He noticed the young man, Jack Ryan Edwards, watching him and said, come join me in doing this.
What I loved about this all started unfolding last week while we were on the road, and I wasn't tuning in to Facebook, but I had people messaging me saying, Shannon, are you watching this? Are you seeing this? And what happened was that this young man who works at this Roos's store saw this person standing there who was so interested in what he was doing. He tried to start a conversation that wasn't really successful, but then said, here, you want, and there's video of it. You guys can.
Yeah, they posted, actually, Jack Ryan's sister posted the videos to Facebook. So that went viral.
Right.
And people started watching
and then as this whole thing grew and it continues to flourish, I was missing it all, except I was getting the updates from people. And, so first it was this video, and it was just a lovely thing that this young man said, you want to help? You can help. And so you see him taking great care to put the orange juice in the right place, in the right lineup, and the worker is saying, you're doing a great job, dude, this is fabulous, you're helping me out. But the dad is talking to the worker while he's doing it and saying, so, do you go to school? And the young man says, no, I'm hoping to go back to college, got to figure out how to pay for it, so on and so forth. So what has happened as a result of this is so amazing to me, that the dad went and started a GoFundMe for this young man to be able to go back to college because it touched him so much.
And it's raised $120,000. And then not only that, a local credit union donated a car to the family so he would have a means of getting to
Gotta love that. But then in the interim, the store now has offered the young man with autism a job.
Right. So look at all these things that were started by this one act of kindness.
And when people say that they don't like the internet, I just need all of us to remember that things like this weren't possible before the internet. To make something like that a good deed, he was just being a good person, and somebody just happened to catch it, and isn't that a lovely thing? And it made us all feel better. And people all around the world agreed this young man should get to go to college, and just made it possible.
Right.
And by him doing that, he changed the world in so many different directions. But that young man now has a job, and this grocery store has an appreciation for 2 of their employees that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
Love it.
I know.
Don't we love it? Good story.
Very
All right.
inspirational. Okay, well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be back with someone who's been on our show before, Jenny Palmietto from the Love and Autism Conference.
Love talking with her.
Yes, we're going to hear about, she's got some very exciting things coming up this year.
How love is flourishing on the autism spectrum.
Okay, so we'll be back with Jenny.
Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, you're back at Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman, and you're at the Allergy-Friendly Cooking Show. And we have kind of an interesting surprise. I've brought my sister. That's surprise number 1.
Yeah. The fact that I came is surprise number 2.
I know, right?
Hi, Jamie. Hi.
And we're doing one of my favorite recipes, an ode to Sue, a Taka super mom. She created a kid-friendly sushi recipe for her son, Zach. So hi, Zach. Thanks for allowing us to borrow your lunch recipe because it's really awesome. So we can't wait to show it to you. First, what I'm going to do is we're going to cut up some of these things so we can get ready. I'm going to take an organic cucumber and just make some slices of this that we're going to use in a little bit to add some extra textures to the seaweed roll that we're going to do. And I'm just making long slices so we can place this in our sushi later on. And then I got, of course, a nitrate-free, gluten-free, fantastic sausage. Love this. So this is a barbecue chicken that we had last night. It was pretty awesome. Make sure that I have a little bit of everything here for the sushi roll. So now let's make the sauce. Use my gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free soy sauce. And of course, my most favorite thing in the world is crushed ginger. Love this stuff.
I thought that was garlic at first.
No, you can actually
I didn't know you
do
buy it that way.
this. Ginger is just such a blessing for digestion. So I just made this quick sauce, super easy. So here's my cooked rice. This rice is very, very sticky. I use this really great little water and apple cider vinegar combination just to keep my hands. That's what the sushi chefs do, is a little trick, which is like pretty.
They're used for apple cider.
I know, and I love that stuff. So good for you. So all I'm doing is just keeping my fingers a little bit damp so the rice doesn't stick to my fingers. And we're just pushing this all through. If your kids don't like green, not a problem. You just flip it over. So that way we can hide the green stuff from our kids and it will be rice out as part of the recipe. So let's have a little fun. We're going to do my favorite, avocado. And if you're sending this to lunch with your kids, you may want to put a little extra of the lemon on there because it will get brown. And I even have sensory issues for the brown stuff. So there we go. There's our avocado. So the next thing I'm going to do is do a couple of the cucumbers. I know, it's so easy and it's so cute and we're going to eat healthy.
You're going to make one for me for lunch today.
Yes,
right?
you can have one for lunch. Now comes the fun stuff, the sausage.
So you could put anything in here.
Anything.
Jeez.
Anything. It's really just the simplest thing in the entire world. And then, so, you know, it's sushi kids can eat, and I wasn't joking about that. So I may squeeze a little more extra lemon on there. And now I'm going to take my little sausage, or sauce, excuse me. Just put a little bit on there so we're coating. About a teaspoon. Doesn't it look good? You can get this at any cooking food store. So this is just the little sushi roller, which I think is fun. So I'm going to put this underneath, and I'm going to start to roll. So you got to watch how you go through and roll this. So the biggest thing is to try to get it compacted enough. So when all is said and done, we can hide the green stuff. So again, with cutting sushi, you want to make sure your knife's really sharp. And we also want to get it a little wet because that way it would make it easier for cutting. So I'm going to just cut off the ends. It's so funny. These are our taster bites, Jamie. You can tell me how these taste. Go ahead and try it.
Yum.
I know, right?
See?
And your body kind of goes, wait, I'm waiting for seafood. But you've got awesome sausage, chicken. You've got a full serving of vegetables. And is that good? Yeah. Yum? You're not lying? You're not lying? Okay, good.
I like more sauce.
You like more
We
sauce?
can even put wasabi in there if you like.
Yeah, if, you know, I think the wasabi, the issue.
Oh, we're making it for kids, sorry.
Yeah, we are making it for kids. This is just a fun way to introduce more foods to your kids, and notice they're eating seaweed. We'd love to hear from you. If you have an idea or you want us to convert a recipe, let us know. Jamie, thanks for being my fabulous Vanna White. You can reach us at autismlive@gmail.com or Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. Or we have thousands of recipes on Taka Now. So, you know, go check out the Taka website and let's get cooking. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild, let's get.
And we're back. And as promised, we have Jenny Palmietto from the Love and Autism Conference that you do every year. And Jenny is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the clinical director of the Family Guidance and Therapy Center in Southern California, correct?
Yeah.
And soon to be in Texas?
That's right, soon to be in Texas.
Okay.
We have a lot of viewers in Texas, I'm sure. And so you're going to be primarily based out of Austin?
And Elgin, Texas, so Bastrop County.
Very, very cool.
Pretty close to Austin.
Fabulous. Let's talk a little bit about, we've got these gorgeous t-shirts that you brought for us, and you've got your conference coming up. When are the dates this year?
October 13th and 14th, and these are actually our classic tees, and our members, our Love and Autism members, receive this as a gift when they join the membership.
What a fabulous thing. They're gorgeous, and they're soft.
They're soft.
I love good soft t-shirts.
We really went a lot of rounds because of the sensory. We want a positive sensory experience with the product. So we kept reprinting and feeling and washing and making sure that it had it could be wearable by our tribe.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, tell us more about what the theme is this year and actually where it is. We said Southern California, but where in Southern California?
We do Love and Autism in San Diego, and our theme this year is beautiful, beautiful, and it really is about authenticity, living as exactly who you are, showing up in the world as nobody but yourself, and when we can. When we as parents allow our children to do this, when we allow ourselves to do this, when we cultivate a community that allows for authenticity, it just grows love and self-love. So, and when we were aligning our speakers, I just thought, wow, these people are kind of embodying authenticity, and so then we came to this idea of beautiful, because when we are ourselves, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, and if you can't love yourself, you're not ready to go out into the world and love other people and be loved by other people.
It's this, it goes both ways. When we receive love, we're able to love ourselves. When we love ourselves, we're able to show up for other people, open for loving relationships, and so.
So let's talk about some of the
presenters. We've just I'm really excited about this year. We have a little bit of a beachy theme going on. I've got my new shirt, and that's really inspired by Clay Marzo and Jill Marzo, pro surfer and soul surfer. Clay, and he's been my favorite surfer for about a decade, and
he's on the spectrum.
He's on the spectrum, and you guys were just talking about anxiety, and he definitely experiences anxiety, and I think that so often knowing so many people on the spectrum, there's very few that say no, anxiety is not a thing for me,
exactly.
Or hasn't been a thing for me. So Clay and his mom will be doing. We'll be talking about living their best lives, and what I really like, I always love a parent-child combo to talk, because the parent-child relationship is so critical, and it doesn't end, right? Ever. It's a lifelong relationship, and so they're showing up together. I think what Jill's done in her life is allowed her made unconventional decisions for her child that were for her child, not for what the world said you must do with your child, or and she and because of that, they've he's doing what he loves every day, surfing the world through the best waves, and he's just so talented. So super excited. His sister, Gina Marzo, was our intern this year, our social media intern. So it was a real family affair. It's been fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Tremendous. Okay, so they're going to be there. Who else?
Yeah. So this year we gave, we passed the baton to David Finch for the master ceremonies, and he's a dear friend of mine, and he just watched the anxiety that doing this role created in me, and he said, you know what, I'm going to take that next year, and I'm going to make it comedy gold. And I thought,
wonderful.
Yeah, let's do that. And so he's going to come and do that. We've got a ton of musical presentations. Noah Cummins is a acoustic guitarist, singer located in Nashville, and he's going to be presenting he's going to be performing some of his songs, some other kind of more known favorites and that sort of thing. We've got a bunch of young talent coming in.
We've got a couture designer,
Michael Ryan Andelsek.
We've had him on the show.
Yeah, he's adorable. Isn't he the nicest guy in the world?
Can I say that I don't know if I told you this, but one of our favorite people here, Sue Cho, she just recently got married, and I talked to her about him being on the show. He designed her wedding.
Oh, he did?
He did,
oh
and it's gorgeous. They're now friends, and so at some point we need to have them both on the show and show her wedding dress.
He is just so
Isn't he
heart-centered. I found
He's
him and
so
I fell in
lovely.
love with him just by watching his YouTube videos,
Right.
and then looking at his clothing and just
Yeah,
his
his
social
designs are
mission
gorgeous.
in terms of hiring autistic
Hiring,
people.
right.
From from the ground up all the way to designing, marketing all the materials. I
Yeah.
love that, and I also love that he's using his sensory experiences, how he experiences the world, to guide his designs.
Yeah.
And so often in, I think, our community, we're talking about sensory as a dysfunction or as a really negative thing.
Right.
And so he's showing us how to tune in and connect with these experiences and possibly make them part of who you are and how you earn a living, I guess.
Yeah. He's
But
amazing.
He's cool.
I can't wait to show you pictures of the wedding gown. Like, she's somebody that would need a wedding gown that didn't look like anybody else's
Right,
wedding gown, and it is stunning what he did, and it is so her.
Well, and then speaking of weddings, the Alex Generous and her new hubby,
Right.
Roy Lancaster, are coming in and talking about newlyweds and how they manage their neurodivergent, neurologically mixed relationship. And she's just delightful too. She's funny and just kind of talks off the cuff, and I just really adore her. I've not met her husband yet, so I'm really excited to see them.
Is one of them on the spectrum? One isn't? or
Alex
how
Generous
that?
is on the spectrum, and she has her TED Talk has been viewed millions of times. It's
Okay.
one of, really, there's only a few autistic people that have been represented on the TED stage, and she's one of them. So, check that out. She's got a cute little talk.
And who is disability rights activist Melanie Yurgo?
Yurgo. So she is a professor, and she just authored a book. What is it? Authoring Autism. Oh, gosh. Oh man, I'm going to botch the book.
It's okay.
Look her up. She's one of those people that is insanely intelligent. I find myself to be decently smart. I started reading her book, and it's about how language is important, what we write, what we say about autism matters, and it shapes not only the autistic person's identity, but it shapes how the world interacts. And I think that, you guys were just showing that video, that beautiful video of the world interacting in a way, showing up with kindness and humanity. And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And I think that she's taking a real academic viewpoint of this and helping us even look at how the literature, the scientific literature can demean. And she'll be unpacking that and doing it in a really neat way. So I'm really excited about her, as well as Monique Iwa-Anawa. And she is the editor of the anthology Racialized Autism. And so she is a person of color, a mom. One of her children is neurodivergent. She's autistic herself. She's a human rights activist. Her bio is so extensive. She's done so many cool things. And this book that she put together, I think it's, I don't know of another one like this. It's an anthology, a collection of pieces by people of color that are also autistic, and talking about the intersection
That's
through poetry.
rarely talked about. That's an interesting
And what she'll talk about is that it matters.
Yeah.
Race is everything
it
when
does.
talking about autism, and there's a huge disparity in services, treatment, identity, and community understanding related to that. So
Right.
she'll be bringing in all that
Wow.
with her.
Powerful.
Yeah, she's a pretty dynamic woman who's really changing the world. So she's cool, and her book's great. Lots of great pieces in there.
So again, October 13th, and where do people go to begin to register and
Yes.
make sure that they are able to come?
loveandautism.com, so and spelled out A-N-D. And we have a lot of guidance there in terms of funding. We love people to find funding.
It's funded by the regional center.
It is
in
funded by the
California,
regional
right?
center. Each regional center, as we know, does things a little differently.
Yeah.
So we get on the phone with case coordinators all the time and help them get that POS in for the stipend. Some cover it fully, some give a stipend. Our San Diego Regional Center gives a $200 stipend. If you get in under early bird and you're a member, that leaves you with a $15
which is amazing.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, to be able to take advantage
So,
of
but
all
for
that.
people who don't live in California and don't have the California, they can still come.
Absolutely.
They just would need to look for other funding besides the regional center if they wanted to defray
And
costs.
honestly, if somebody found funding that I don't know about, I'd love to hear about it so I could spread the word and help other people get here. And you know, we've actually lowered our costs this year. We're trying to make this event that people can continue to return to, that people can, that people can make it. Bring their family members. We have so many young people that come.
Yeah, you said, do you have a teen track now?
We have a teen track
called You Belong.
It went lovely. Last year was our first year, and Daniel Wendler and his best friend Kyle. Love him. They're speaking this year. I was like, you guys are on the main stage talking about your friendship. Kyler Shemway, they ran it, and it was beautiful. I had noticed that a lot of teens are coming as young as 12 and 11 were showing up at the conference. And at the end of the day, they were like playing on their phones in the back. And I was like, oh man, I could do this better and different.
Right.
So we have this really fun and engaging, it's a full 2-day track, and it's just small group. And we have a lot of return people, so we know it went well. And yeah, they did a great job.
So we want to mention that you have 100% autistic representation on the main stage and 50% autistic women speakers as an indication that autism is not a male diagnosis.
Yes. I didn't even know it was going to be the year of the woman when we set this up. And I felt it, and I thought, you know what? Females are so misunderstood. They have late diagnosis. They get a personality disorder or a bipolar diagnosis, or just she's emotional dramatic, or you know, it's you and mom-daughter stuff, and it's spectrum stuff. And so we invited a lot of really talented, successful women to share their narratives and guide us a little bit on what this means. A lot of them are mothers, and I think that moms really give us another layer of what it means to be autistic and what it means to raise an autistic child. And so I think there's going to be a lot of kind of like rich experiences there. And then, you know, it just felt, I don't know if we tried to do 100% autistic representation. It just happened to be. And then when it started to get close to that, we were like, this is us. This is So Love and Autism to... You know, we've been saying autistic people should be the ones talking about what it means to be autistic. I will never know this neurology. I can listen, learn, and dive deep into it, but I won't have this experience in my life. And so, yeah, this year we have a great representation, and each act has somebody on the spectrum.
Love it. Last week I was up in the Pacific Northwest and meeting with a lot of families, and I had my son with me who's 15, and it was kind of amazing because as we would meet, and I would talk, and then I would bring him out, and then they would ask him questions, and we actually took a show up there and did all this, and at the end everybody would say to me, well, Shannon, it was great meeting you, and I loved having an opportunity to talk to you, loved seeing your show, but the best part was meeting your son. And they would say, where can I meet more people that are older on the spectrum? And one of the things I said was, go to the Autism and Love conference. You will see a very positive group of people of all different, everything,
different
race,
struggles and strengths,
you know, different sexual orientations, different religions, you know, but on the spectrum. And you will see the big, beautiful spectrum there. And so, you know, I'd
what
actually
it's done for me as a clinician is in knowing more autistic adults and really knowing them. It just massages any worry. When my anxiety, you know, a child is going through something significant, hard, and everybody's worried. And then I kind of think about like, wait, hold on. Yeah. People change, people grow. This is what childhood is about, and if we can nurture people in love and let him or her know that they're worthy and lovable just as they are, and have autistic role models for their parents, for themselves, we're in a better place. I mean, I personally feel like everybody needs neurodivergent role models. My children play Legos. They wanted me to say hi. Hi, Ollie. Hi, Grace. They play Legos and they play Clay Marzo and Gina Marzo doing toe-ins and servers. And I was like, you know what? This is so fabulous to have a diversity in role models.
Right.
We all need that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so again, the website?
Yes.
What is it?
Loveandautism.com.
Fabulous.
We encourage you all to go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being
Thanks
with
for
us.
being with us,
Thank you for
Jenny.
having me again.
Okay.
It's fun.
Always.
Great conference.
Always enjoyed to have you here. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we have Brenda Smith-Miles who's going to be joining us, so stick with us.
Nobody ever asks a kid with autism, what is it you'd really like to do? At this school, we ask the kids, what is your goal? What is your dream? Exceptional Minds is a vocational training program for young adults on the autism spectrum who want to have careers in computer animation and visual effects. I think young people with autism are totally underestimated.
When you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. They all have different talents, different skills, and what surprised me is that there really are no limits, that if these guys believe that they can do something, they really can.
It's estimated that 90 to 95% of young adults with autism are unemployed or underemployed.
A lot of young adults still live at home. A lot of them suffer from depression and are very isolated from the rest of the world, and the opportunities for them are very limited.
We want to develop careers for our young adults. Our full-time program runs 3 years, at the end of which we have job placement and job coaching. We have a work readiness program. We also have our own in-house studio so that when our students graduate, they can do on-the-job training and work on real projects.
We outsourced about 30-40 shots to the team here. They did fantastic work that we can put into a movie and be proud of it. It's great. I mean, we want to do it again.
The studio is their first step into the professional world, the first step in their new careers as digital artists.
The whole purpose is to get the students out into the real world.
We all have the same dreams. We want significance, dignity, and purpose with our lives. We have an opportunity to give those 3 words to every single student at this school who will actually be able to go out and participate in the dream.
This is my first full-time, full-paying job. I primarily work in After Effects. I learned After Effects at Exceptional Minds. It seemed like a good place for me to fit in because I was interested in animation.
Right from the first day that Nicky set foot in our company, he was producing work for us. We saw what level of professionalism is being instilled in them from the very beginning.
This was the first opportunity where Nicky could combine something he loved to do with something he was really, really good at that could eventually lead to employment.
When we first met Kevin, he was working at a supermarket bagging groceries, and they said he would never amount to anything else.
I work at Stargate Studios, and I'm a junior compositor. I mainly do like rotoscoping right now, and I'm still learning.
I think that you find great talent in the most amazing places. The students at Exceptional Minds have had a fair amount of training to get them ready for the visual effects environment.
If it wasn't for Exceptional Minds, I might still be at the supermarket, and I might be living at my parents' house.
Everything's changed. Nicky has purpose.
It feels like I'm a member of society now.
He's capable of making it on his own.
Once you get inside and you see what's really happening there, you immediately want to be a part of it.
It's the dream factory, you know, the movie business, and if you can connect people with their dreams, then the magic happens.
At Exceptional Minds, we like to say that we are changing lives one frame at a time.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism?
Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
And welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And now we have our guest, Brenda Smith-Miles, PhD. Brenda is president of AAPC Publishing, which is a small niche company that publishes books on autism spectrum disorder. We've had some of her authors here on the show.
And really
welcome to the show, Brenda.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, and Brenda is rather prolific. Her bio is several pages here, but I just want to mention that she's written over 2,000 articles on ASD as well as 200 books. Anything else you'd like to tell us about your background, Brenda, before we get started?
No, I think that might just set the stage.
Okay, yeah. That's what I call prolific.
Incredible.
Now, we wanted to talk to you today about an article that you have written about the cycle of tantrums, rage, and meltdowns in children and youth with ASD, because that's something that's a particular interest to our families.
Pretty much everybody has experienced this at some point, and nothing can take the wind out of your sails faster than a meltdown, because after that, then you live in fear of it happening again. You live in fear of it happening at the worst possible moment. So we love having you here to talk about this exact subject.
Yes, and we want to know, how common is this with our population of kids with ASD?
At least 50% of autistic individuals experience meltdowns, if not more. And one of the things that is particularly tragic is that if we do not intervene, those meltdowns will keep on happening.
Absolutely. And so let's start to unlock this. Why do meltdowns occur?
Okay, well, meltdowns occur because of neurological reasons. Sometimes people like to think that the behavior is purposeful, but there's a firm base of literature that shows us that there's underactivity in the parts of the brain in charge of self-regulation, which means that for our individuals with autism, they don't automatically know how to detect how they are feeling. They don't know how to match an emotion to event, and they don't know how to calm down once they experience a meltdown.
So
the important. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Keep going. I interrupted you.
The important thing is that the meltdowns are not purposeful behavior. It is the only behavior the individual has in their repertoire at that period of time.
It's like a desperate thing, and we see that.
So tell us what the cycle of the meltdown looks like. You have a cycle that you have identified with different stages. Can you talk about that?
Well, there are 3 stages. There's the rumbling stage is the first. The second is called the rage stage, and the third stage is called the recovery stage. The most important part of these particular stages is the rumbling stage, and you may have seen our individuals rumble, meaning that they may engage in small behaviors that indicate that a large behavior is likely to occur later. So, for example, you may see a child indicating that they are becoming upset by drumming their fingers or pulling on their eyebrows or pacing back and forth, biting on their cuffs. Quite often at this stage, the behaviors are really seem minor, and unless you're attuned to them, you can overlook them easily. And what we need to be is very much in tune to what is happening so that we can intervene and stop that meltdown at that point.
Well, that brings up a really important point. Once we start to be able to identify those, what can we do at each stage to help to take the fuse out of this?
Okay, well, during that first stage, the rumbling stage, the goal is to distract the individual.
Okay.
Because if you can distract them, then you can begin to calm down. What you're not going to do at this level is to teach a new skill. Because the minute the individual begins to rumble, what I say is all opportunities for learning are gone. So if you see your child or your student, perhaps their rumbling behavior is, scratching their head. And if that is the case, then what you might do is send that child on an errand.
Because that's the distraction.
Yes, it could be that maybe you engage that child in a discussion about his special interest on, flags of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that you offer the child or direct the child to a break.
Okay, we refer to this as antiseptic bouncing. Is that what it's called?
Okay, great. Antiseptic bouncing is exactly one of those terms that means to intervene and remove the child from the situation in a non-punitive way. And so if I send the child to run an errand, I'm engaging in antiseptic bouncing for that student.
And what is proximity control?
Well, some of our students feel very comfortable when we stand next to them, and you've probably experienced this with a child who is rumbling, maybe pulling on his lip, and you go stand next to that individual, and they can see that, okay, you are there to support them, and you can see sometimes their bodies immediately relax.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
Now, the thing is with these interventions, not all of these interventions will work with all children who have autism, and so you have to match each one of those interventions to the individual child.
Okay, so that's rumbling. What about the other stages? What can we be doing?
Okay. Well, the rage stage is when that child actually has that meltdown and engages in those big overt behaviors, or it could be withdrawal. And at that point in time, what you largely want to do is, if you can get that child safely out of that environment, that is a great thing to do. However, many of our kids at that stage just need to have that meltdown in the spot they're in. And so what we need to do is to protect that student to make sure that he does not hurt himself. If there's others in the environment, we need to have a plan in place. And so if we're talking about school, it might be that we have a plan and we've practiced with the other students in the class given, and they go to the library. And what happens is the teacher can stay with our student and help him calm down from that rage cycle. I'm a big fan, however, of making sure that our teachers who support our kids with autism, even though I do not support restraint, because sometimes what that does is that will increase that behavior during the rage cycle, is to make sure the teachers are trained in restraint, because what we don't want is a teacher who is a bit reticent, who hasn't been trained, to reach in and physically try to redirect that child. The child could get hurt, or the adult could get hurt.
And in fact, frequently that is what happens, is that the adult doesn't know what to do and the adult gets hurt. And what I hate is that gets pinned on the child. And it becomes such a huge problem when in fact, if we gave proper training to the teacher to know how to diffuse or how to stand, and there are specific stances and specific ways to hold your arms so that you prevent yourself from being hurt, which protects the child. And it's so difficult to convince schools of this, but it's the truth.
Well, I developed something called the Student Crisis Plan Sheet, which takes each one of those 3 stages and talks about the behaviors that you are likely to see and the interventions that go along with each stage. Because we need to approach this like, an educational problem and make sure that we have strategies. The teacher needs to know, as you said, where to stand, what to do, what to say, what not to say. You need to have a plan in place of what happens if there's other people in the environment. Do you need help? How do you get it? If a child has, any likelihood of having a meltdown, this needs to be discussed seriously and have a plan in place. And then further, we need to make sure that the child himself or herself knows that we do not blame the child for that behavior, that it is neurologically based, but we also recognize that we can teach that child and that child can learn to regulate their behavior with our support.
Yeah, the last stage we didn't mention, which is the recovery stage.
Now, the recovery stage is the stage where that meltdown behavior has stopped. And the child may look like he's back to his typical self, but he is not. Generally, our students at the recovery stage will need some time to get back to their typical self. But while this is happening, generally they like to get right back into the schedule. As you know, our children, adolescents, and adults love routine. And so if our child has a meltdown and gets to the recovery stage and it's math time, most likely he will want to participate in the routine of math. But because he is so fragile at that point, I recommend that teachers will have a folder, kind of a plan B folder, if you will, that has work the individual can do, so that if the teacher's planning on introducing new concepts, that child can work on information that he already knows because it won't be as cognitively draining. Also at that recovery stage, you're going to want to maintain your distance. Quite often, adults, when a child has a meltdown, they want to hover over that individual with the best of intentions to make sure that they are okay. And for many of our individuals, they might misperceive this, and this might make the child more uncomfortable and lead to another meltdown.
Okay.
During this stage also, there's no reason to refer to the meltdown.
It's such a salient point.
Yes.
We're running out of time, and so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the book that people should get that will give them more information about this.
Okay, well, the book is called High Functioning Autism and Difficult Moments, Practical Solutions for Meltdowns.
It's lovely.
And it outlines each of the 3 stages. It explains why the meltdowns occur, and then offers instructional strategies to teach the child how not to melt down.
And where can they get this book?
Well, they can get it from Amazon.com, or they can get it at the AAPC website at www.aapcpublishing.net.
Spectacular. And this is not the only book that you have out right now. You've got another book. Tell us about that.
Well, I have a brand new book out. It's called Excelling with Autism, and it looks at the challenges that we are having in helping individuals with autism reach their potential. And it takes the elements of deliberate practice, which is what we use to teach high-performing people, whether they are mathematicians or artists or pianists. And it tells you how to take that science of deliberate practice and apply it to individuals with autism so that they can meet their potential.
Absolutely
great.
love it. I want to thank you so much for being with us. This has been so educational.
Yes.
Really lovely. And we thank you for all the work that you're doing personally and all the work that you're doing in publishing, because
as we said, we've had some of your authors on and we've been enjoying them.
We're going to be ending the show, but I want to ask you to stay on if you could, because I'd like to talk to you for a minute afterwards, if you got a minute.
I'd be delighted, and thank you for having me do this. I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome.
So much.
We are out of time.
We are out of time. I want to bring up, though, that we have a show tomorrow, a live show, and on tomorrow's show we have an extended interview with Peter Farrig. For those of you who watch the show and know that frequently I talk about we had such an amazing team, and honestly the therapist that I loved the most was Peter Farrig. He's been on the show before, but not for a long time, and I'm so excited about an opportunity to have him answer some of your questions and then to talk a little bit about what, the impact that he's had on autism, not just on our lives, but on autism altogether. So that's going to be really wonderful.
Great.
Plus, we have a lot of back to school tips that are happening tomorrow, because a lot of you are going back to school this week, some of you next week, and others, it's a few more weeks, but now's a great time to be getting ready, So we're going to unpack that as well tomorrow. So that'll all be happening. We're totally out of time, but until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.